want to do that at one of these education breakfasts. Anybody feel shocked by that? Oh, no, not now. Okay, we only have about 10 minutes left, and I know what happens at classes and at business breakfasts. And that is all the hands go up at 10 o'clock, but that's when we're going to end. So we have a few more questions, and we'll take one question right in the back here. Yes?
You've all alluded to career and return on investment when you're applying for financial aid. Well, just two questions. How do your financial aid departments take this career and return on investment into consideration when you're dealing with a incoming freshman who may have no idea what his career may or may not be?
Well, there are all kinds of meetings that take place, even in the first week or so that students arrive on campus. We just, I don't know if it's been publicly announced, we just changed our name. You made me think of it, we now call it the Office of Career Research and International Opportunities. But the whole idea, we believe our students might go through as many as 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds of careers, or maybe very different careers within a particular segment of the economy. So they're going to have to be nimble in the world, and they're all going to live forever because of all these bio advances in the life sciences. So they have to get ready for a long life. So there's no question that there's a lot of education that takes place right from the beginning. And people who come in thinking they wanted to do one thing often find at college that there's a whole new and different world out there. We're hoping that this economy will have one good benefit, and that is that it will maybe encourage students much more than they have in the past to think about doing something with their lives that they really value, something that they love, something that's close to their heart, as opposed to, let's say, the thing that's going to pay them the most and get them the most toys. So, we're all working on that.
I think college is so often a period of discernment, and people do arrive thinking they want to do one thing and they find another path. But at a place like Boston College, for example, you've got 4 undergraduate colleges: arts and sciences, management, nursing, and education. Obviously, if a student comes in management and goes through 4 years in management and becomes a financial analyst, that's going to dictate a certain salary. That student is going to be able to perhaps sustain loans more so than somebody who might be looking at a career in education and nursing, unfortunately, fields that are not compensated quite as well. So I think for the students that do come in those fields, knowing they're committed to becoming a secondary school teacher or to becoming a nurse, there's got to be a recognition that I'm not going to be making as much, so whatever debt I take on has got to be related to that. The hope, I'm not a financial aid expert, I'm an admissions director, but I'm hearing more and more about income contingent loans, and I would hope that that would be a trend that would really begin to take off, that for those young people that are committed to go into teaching, social services, nursing, such critical professions, that there may be discounted loans or loan forgiveness programs. You have to look around for them. They do exist right now, but I'm hopeful that that's the kind of thing that's really going to take off, because otherwise we're going to be really abandoning the hopes and dreams of the country by not filling those education and health services and social services fields with qualified people.
Joe?
Perhaps a contrarian view, and that is that I would hate to see a financial aid package built upon any elements based upon what an 18-year-old is telling me their career is going to be. But there is one reason to ask, and that is there may be particular scholarships in that area. For instance, nursing, teaching. So if someone's ready to start that, or in any curricular area, that's good information to have, because that can lead to more scholarships. But I would not think about, well, this person's going into this field so they can absorb more debt. Because the problem is the average student switches majors at least twice, and if you look at the career issue, that's going to change. So I think we've got to be very modest in terms of us drawing correlations between what an 18-year-old tells us and their financial aid future.
Just a question for the, I'm sorry, just a question for the audience. How many of, my degree is in computer science. How many of you are working in your degree fields? Okay, so some. But you really have to, as already has been said, look at that. Students, this is a time for them to grow and change and explore. And the one thing that our offices are really trying to provide is that information to give them those opportunities. So if anything, we want to encourage students to look at the best person that they can become in the environment that they're in.
1 out of 5 American students will go into a business or management-related field. But do you know what the largest major is every year for the last 50 years? It's called undecided. So with all due respect, I find myself not only sympathetic, but right there with Harvard on this one. You can't afford not to think about career choices. It's not so much the self-perception of the kid, it's the options. And we can't, as educators, remain in an ivory tower, unconnected to career options. We need program advisory boards that are creating internships to finance higher education in every field.
Yes, we have a question right in the back.
I have a question about why the cost of college education has gone up so much and has gone up much more than the cost of living. You know, when we look back at our own college tuition years ago, we can't fathom the amount it costs for college, for private institutions particularly. So I wonder if you could address that.
Everybody's rushing to answer that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike just went dead. I don't know what happened.
This is not the first time we've had that question. I guess you'd have to ask yourself, do you run a cutting-edge research institute in your home? Do you try to have one of the world's greatest libraries in your home? Do you, want to provide, research, mentorship, counseling? There's a whole range of things that universities do. There's a long laundry list. I won't go through the whole laundry list. But there's no question that running a university, any kind of a university, including the no-frills universities and even the electronic universities that are out there now, are not really particularly related to the idea of inflation. For example, a lot of the things that universities do go up way in excess of inflation every year. Try, for example, to keep up just with the library. Some of those journals, some of the books, the expenditures, the number of publications that come out every year are just, dramatic. So almost anything we do, our expenses are going to be typically, as we look at it, usually twice, whatever we could think of in terms of charging for tuition. So we're not a good business model, if we're sitting there trying to make a profit. So the idea, I guess, is that we all, of course, are undergoing, severe budget cuts of one kind or another. Our office, had to cut 15% off our operating budget last year. Everybody's going through this in one form or another. It's a good thing for higher education, like any other institution, to go through this kind of rigor. And yet, if we want to have colleges and universities remain the gold standard for the world, we hope the engine for opportunity in the country, and in fact the basis for we hope will be a highly competitive economy in the generations ahead, you have to invest. So it's a tricky problem. The real question goes back, I think, to the issue of how much is it actually going to cost you in the end. It's not what the price is, but what the cost is, and that's why financial aid is so important.
None of us are going to sit up here and minimize the cost, the tuition, the room and board, whether you're talking private or public universities. That would be ludicrous of us to do that. But there's an interesting guy, there's an economist at NYU named William Baumol, who classifies education and several other fields as not productivity and efficiency enterprises. We're not productivity and efficiency enterprises. The learning process, the research process, the teaching process, we've not gained any productivity over the last 40, 50, 60 years. Teachers can't deliver lectures any more quickly. They can't grade papers more quickly. Research can't be done, for the most part, any more quickly. It's a slow and it's a painstaking process. The number one item in any institution's budget is human capital. Our faculty salaries are the single most important driver on Boston College's budget. And we happen to live in a pretty expensive region. So if we're going to attract first-rate faculty, which we want to do to provide a first-rate education, This is going to be an expensive proposition. There's no question that we could all not only level off tuition or bring it down, but it clearly would be at the expense of cutting full-time faculty and replacing them with adjuncts. It would be at the expense of class sizes. Right now, the average class size at Boston College is under 30 students over 4 years. We want to shoot that up to 50? Absolutely, we could stabilize tuition or bring it down. But quality would be compromised in the educational experience. And so, I think again, I don't want to minimize it. I don't want to be an apologist, but I do think it needs to be put into some kind of context why education is expensive. It's not something where efficiency can automatically be achieved.
This is a great Northeast question, is what I call it, because it doesn't get asked as often in the Midwest or the West, and that's because in the Northeast the private institutions were here before the publics. And it's the reverse at the rest of the country. And so we forget where most people go to school, which is community colleges. And it's quite affordable. It's actually an amazing experiment that was started in this country. So again, the affordability issue, which student, which institution you're talking about. Two other things about affordability in the Northeast. One is, at a time where the tuition rates escalated rapidly, there was increasing demand because of the baby boomlet. Started around 1999, 2000, 2001, continued for a decade. Most industries don't cut back at a time when there's high demand. So that's economy rule number one. Second, the uses of technology that in every other industry have produced efficiencies and productivities has been a net cost in higher ed. All of the technology cost us money, but we don't get productivity gains. That's going to have to change. Now, it may not change at the most highly selective institutions, but every place else, you're going to see a change over the next 10 years, because for the other institutions, of which Leslie is one, the pattern is not sustainable. And that's going to go for the publics as well. So I think you're going to see a bigger difference between the highly selective institutions, private institutions such as Leslie, and public institutions who have to face the issue of productivity gains using technology, looking carefully at the use of student time. A 4-year degree, the utilization rate of a student going through a 4-year degree, the number of weeks they're engaged at the university is less than 60%. Why do we do that? Because we used to farm in the summer. We need to come to grips with that and think about the cost that we're all paying for that. And I think that's gonna happen within the decade.
Joe, thank you. Yes, Jim.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for coming. And think about this. There's a war of amenities going on. When kids go onto campuses, they want state-of-the-art fitness centers, absolutely cutting-edge dorms, a portal for every pillow. We can't any longer duplicate. And I'm hoping that the next Neuroscience Center of Excellence will be co-built by Harvard and Leslie. Thanks for coming today.
I want you to look around for a minute. I want you to look around for a minute and see our sponsors. Thank you for our presenting sponsors: First Republic Bank, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Stonehill College, Toshiba Business Solutions, Leslie University, the Cape Cod Getaway MS Bike Ride, 93 Financial Group, IBEW Local 103, UMass Dartmouth, and the South Coast Development Partnership. Also, thank you to our associate sponsors: Simmons College, Dragon Naturally Speaking Software from Nuance, Sylvan Learning Centers, Risk Strategies Company, and MIFA. I most want to thank you all for coming this morning. You can see it again online at WBZ.com. We'll have reports this afternoon. Also, thank you very much to our distinguished panel: Bill Fitzsimmons, John Mahoney, Liliana Mickle, Dr. Joseph Moore, and Dr. Jim Samuels. Thank you so much, and thank you for attending. Yes, the good old college cheer. We'll see you on the radio. Have a good day.